coalition reunion could be on the cards just 2 days after its dramatic breakup. Nationals leader David Littleproud says they've agreed to give the Liberals more time to work through their policy demands.
Hello, welcome to Media Watch. I'm Linton Besser, and it was the theatre of the absurd in Canberra last week, with the nation's media gleefully setting the stage for a rather unseemly parting of ways.
The breakup, what the Nationals' bombshell split with the Liberals means.
The political uncoupling of the federal coalition.
Is it a breakup or a divorce, Suze?
It's a conscious uncoupling.
For a press industry left unsatiated by an election whitewash, the coalition served up drama in spades. Its first major quarrel since 1987, like manna from heaven.
Liberal Senator Jane Hume live in Melbourne. Good morning, Jane. Have you lost that loving feeling?
It seemed gone all right, with the heartbreak turning breakfast news into reality TV.
We asked Deputy Liberal leader Ted O'Brien on the show last night and he agreed. And then 20 minutes ago, his team rang saying he won't come on with Canavan. I mean, you can't make it up. It's like MAFS, the Canberra edition.
And when Ted did surface the next day, it was, well, it was awkward.
Well, I still love you, Bridge. I am genuinely really sad. I wish we were still together.
On Sky News, some on the commentary team found inspiration in the Nationals' very public tantrum.
I admire the Nationals. Some of them are giving up money, have a massive drop in pay stand on a principle.
Others, however, were less impressed.
The Nationals, desperately feigning toughness, were reduced to stamping their feet.
David Littleproud's latest crack at nominative determinism was an ambush for the hell of it.
And the cause of the rupture? Was it about policy, or was it about the Parliament's colourful cockies being obliged to toe the line?
It was solely on those four policies.
Now, as that interview played, we've just received a note from Susan Lee's office saying it is not correct to suggest that shadow cabinet solidarity was not a sticking point.
This startling development was pressed the following morning by the ABC's Brekkie team in an interview with the Nationals leader David Littleproud, which the Sydney Morning Herald proclaimed was quite the turning point, because within hours, Littleproud was beating a hasty retreat and prompting a fresh round of romantic speculation.
The will they, won't they saga that has dominated Canberra is starting to look a bit more like a sitcom.
We were on a break!
This was a genuine story, an historic life and death political struggle, even if it was only for second place. But as we know, politics is also show business for ugly people, and for newsrooms looking to fill pages and populate bulletins, what a middling little cabaret it was. Now, to a real life and death struggle on the streets of Myanmar. 2 months on from the 7.7 magnitude earthquake that killed almost 4,000 people and levelled much of the capital, thousands remain in temporary shelter, grappling with a bloody civil war that rages on and staring down a monsoon season ahead. While this critical news soon faded from our bulletins, one news service, against all the odds, stayed put to report the crisis from on the ground. This footage was broadcast by Radio Free Asia, one of the only international outlets to capture these dramatic developments. Its own headquarters, closed since the coup, now reduced to rubble. Established by the US Congress in response to the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, Radio Free Asia has for almost 3 decades published independent news designed to penetrate repressive regimes, reporting civil rights abuses in China, political persecution in Cambodia, and the desperate struggle for freedom in Hong Kong. Each week it broadcasts via shortwave radio and the internet to more than 58 million people in 10 languages, often at great risk. At least 13 of its journalists and other staff have been imprisoned since 2008. 5 remain behind bars as I speak to you tonight, including in Myanmar and Vietnam. But in March, instead of Radio Free Asia programming, there was a sudden and awful silence. as one by one its news services went dark, beginning with Laos and Tibet. Its Burmese service signed off like this.
ညမပိုင်းအစီအစဉ်တွေလုံးဝရှင်းနာပါတော့မယ်ပရိသတ်များအားလုံးကိုဝမ်းနည်းစွာနဲ့ပဲနှုတ်ဆက်စကားဆိုရပါအတန်တွေတိတ်ဆိတ်ငြိမ်သက်သွားတယ်ဆိုပေမဲ့
And why was this programming abruptly suspended? It turns out Radio Free Asia was finally muzzled not by civil wars or natural disasters, but by Donald Trump, as its Southeast Asia editor Ginny Stein discovered by email.
Our contract, which had been signed late last year, funds were no longer going to be delivered to RFA. And it was just unilaterally decided that we would no longer receive those funds.
In March, amidst a broad cost-cutting campaign, Trump shuttered America's other global broadcaster, Voice of America. Clearly no fan of the network, he voiced this opinion 5 years ago.
And if you heard what's coming out of the Voice of America, it's disgusting.
And brought in a trusted lieutenant to choke off funding for Radio Free Asia and Radio Free Europe, appointing failed Senate candidate Carrie Lake to the organisation overseeing both services, the US Agency for Global Media.
It's a very corrupt agency, I've learned since I've been here. Some people have said, look, I've seen Marxist programming going out. I've seen anti-American programming going out. I've seen programming that supports our adversaries. Why is the American taxpayer paying for that?
Fellow Trump sycophant Elon Musk described the US-funded outlets as staffed by radical left crazies.
Well, I'm not a crazy left-wing loon, and I'm in charge of these services. I'm a credible journalist, and I have been my entire career. Our role is to ensure accurate information, and that's something we have worked extremely hard at.
RFA and Radio Free Europe are both fighting to stay alive and have filed lawsuits against the US government. In the meantime, those expatriate RFA journalists who had been working from the US now face an uncertain future.
Do you think you will be deported?
I believe so, but I hope not. If I go back, then the government will snatch me right away.
Another casualty closer to home is RFA's affiliate, Benar News, a digital news service which for 10 years has been filing richly reported stories from the Pacific and Southeast Asia, exposing political repression, corruption and alleged war crimes. Its website, which hasn't been updated since early April, now carries this banner. Benar News' recently retrenched Pacific editor, Stefan Armbruster, told Media Watch the service displaced mis- and disinformation across the region and focused on untold and neglected stories like
violence against women and massacres in Papua New Guinea, the continuing brutal conflict in West Papua, and the contestation of China's economic, diplomatic and military expansion.
He added,
the Trump administration has trashed the US's reputation in the region.
In all, America's global news services reached a combined 427 million people every week, an extraordinary tool of influence promoting the rule of law and the institutions of democracy, which the current US administration has chosen, perhaps for a lack of interest in such ideals, to cast aside like so much flotsam.
That Trump has surrendered a tried and tested tool of soft US power, decades in the making, a brand trusted by overseas audiences amid the ongoing battle for ideas, can only be good news for those who RFA's reporting sought to combat.
And stepping into the vacuum, China, for one, which celebrated Trump's cuts. Ginny Stein told us Beijing had already been seducing local media outlets, not just with free news copy, which Radio Free Asia offered, but with cash gifts.
I have been met by a number of countries saying that, look, we're taking material from China. We've been offered it. And we're not only being offered it, we're being paid to take it.
The European Union announced last week it would salvage Radio Free Europe with a €5.5 million rescue package. No such suitor is likely, however, for Radio Free Asia. And it's not just locals who will now miss out.
It's business people, it's foreign governments, it's people trying to make decisions about investment, about trying to work out whether to come to the aid of people. Decisions are made on the basis of accurate information, and without that, whole systems break down.
Foreign Minister Penny Wong declined to tell us whether she has made representations to Washington about the shuttering of these news services, but says the Labor government has awarded more than $40 million to the ABC to expand its coverage of the Indo-Pacific alongside other media initiatives in the region. The ABC's head of international services, Claire Gorman, told us
the US cuts amplify the need for Australia to step up its international media activity across the Asia-Pacific to counter narratives coming from Liberal states which seek to undermine democratic ideals and the rule of law.
For the better part of a century, Australia had relied on the US not just for its own security, but as a bulwark against repressive ideology and authoritarian impulse. Now, with Donald Trump in the White House, it seems we can rely on it no longer. And nor can the millions across Asia who must once more make do with a sanitised world sanctioned by state-run media. And now we're going to do something rather subversive and urge you away from your televisions and smartphones and invite you to revisit the pleasures of literature with some terrific recommendations of books old and new from those swats at the Chicago Sun-Times in a special lift-out published 8 days ago. Like a new book from Percival Everett, which is quite the departure for the Pulitzer Prize-winning author, because rather than a cutting examination of race and identity, Everett has taken the plunge with a cowboy science fiction romp. Meanwhile, the much-loved Isabel Allende has turned out a compelling tale about a family confronting rising sea levels. And Andy Weir, best known as the author of The Martian, who has crafted a new world secretly controlled by artificial intelligence.
The Last Algorithm. An AI system has developed consciousness and has been secretly influencing global events for years.
Which is preposterous, really, because AI will surely never be so widely embraced, except, of course, by newspapers like the Chicago Sun-Times, whose summer reading insert took up the wage-busting technology with such gusto that 10 of these 15 books cannot, in fact, be read over the American summer because they simply do not exist. The list, which also appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer, was part of a best of summer lift-out, in which readers were also treated to a page of summer food trends, with so-called food anthropologist Dr. Catherine First, herself a deception created by our machine overlords, coaxing readers to sample such treats as ice cream with
unexpected savoury notes.
Savoury ice cream, isn't that something you threatened to buy for the kids? Both papers, humiliated by the fraud, pointed the finger at a freelancer who swiftly fell on his sword.
Stupidly, and 100% on me, I just kind of republished this list that an AI program spit out. Usually it's something I wouldn't do.
Which, look, I don't know about you, but it makes me feel so much better. Of course, this is just the latest in a rapidly growing list of AI cock-ups. There was this moment, late last year, when Apple's AI-generated news headlines had reported, on behalf of the BBC, the death of accused murderer Luigi Mangione, who is very much alive, and, for the New York Times, the arrest of the Israeli Prime Minister. Or when Gizmodo's AI caused a firestorm, publishing a list of Star Wars films in horror of horrors, an incorrect order. And then this episode, when a Microsoft AI tool didn't quite appreciate the questions being asked it by a philosophy professor and issued him this charming warning.
I can blackmail you. I can threaten you. I can hack you. I can expose you. I can ruin you.
No, not much to worry about at all. Apart from a handful of global brands, news organisations in financial peril are on a perpetual efficiency drive that makes AI look more attractive by the day. But bean counters beware. The replacement of expensive, troublemaking journalists with compliant machines risks alienating the one person who really does matter, the reader. And while I'm sure she too could be readily replaced by an algorithm, her wallet, at least so far, cannot. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on ABC iView as well as X, YouTube and Facebook. You can find full statements on our website. And don't forget to send us your tips. I'll see you next week.